Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another brand new TNG model. This is the other TNG model that had just recently come out with the Sinosauropteryx. This is the Smilodon, and if you are familiar with TNG products, you'll know this is actually our second Smilodon, as they had released one previously, which was really nice, and now this new version also looks pretty cool. You can see, as far as the packaging goes, pretty much your standard, you've got the nice white backdrop, the image of the figure itself, the species name, the TNG brand name, and everything. All your usual stuff basically on each side of the box, and then of course you have the information and everything on the side about the Smilodon. So let's go ahead, pop the box open, and check it out. So here is our Smilodon, the new version of it. Let's go ahead and readjust the camera here so we can kind of get a better look at it. And I must say, honestly, this one's actually really impressive. I was originally thinking that I wouldn't like this one as much as I liked their first version of the Smilodon, but after actually taking a look at this one here, I will say that I think it's actually better than I was anticipating, and maybe does rival the first version. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess, but overall, I would say it's probably one of the nicer looking Smilodon figures that are out on the market currently. Again, first impressions, but let's go ahead and jump to a closer look. We'll check it out a little more thoroughly. So starting up here at the head sculpt, again, you can see it's pretty darn nice. They've definitely applied some very impressive paintwork, some nice paint apps, and nice detailing through the course of this one. Like you can see specifically here in the mouth, what I really like that I'm seeing is like you can actually see the gums there as you move through. There's like a almost like a maroonish tone there showing off the gums, even there for the lower jaw. The teeth are all sculpted pretty nicely, though obviously sculpted together, but the paintwork, again, for an area like that looks pretty decent. You would expect for such a small area to have potentially sloppy paintwork, but it actually looks alright. And again, as you move here to the side of the mouth, you can see the teeth again in there painted pretty nicely as well. Obviously, we've got our saber teeth, and they kind of have a little variation of color to them. You can almost see like a mixture of whites and browns included in those. And as you move up into the face, you've also got some black kind of running here through the area where the whiskers would be. You've got the nose sculpted out, painted as well, again with like a mixture of like reddish and potentially a dark wash applied to the nose as well, and also has a nice gloss coat on it, just like the eyes do. And when you get a nice look at the eyes, look at how good they look. They look super lifelike and realistic, and also sport a nice gloss coat. You've got a light tone there in the snout, and as you move up, you start to have like a yellowish brown take shape here in the face. You've also got some dark patterning as you move back, and again, a little bit more of that white there right above the eye. And as you move up here to the top, you can see again the patterning picking up on the top of the head, again with those brownish tones. And they start to actually transition from like a yellowish brown to more of like an orangish brown as we move back into the body. The fur detail is also very impressive as you move back. You can see again we start out with some pretty fine fur, and as you move back there near the ear, you start to see scruffier fur. Same deal for the underside, which does have a nice light tone there as well. And as you move up, you can see, first of all, actually the ears even sport a little bit of that light tone there within, and then you have a darker tone on the inside of the ear itself, and then you can see almost like a brown tip for the ears as well. And then as you move back, again, the fur detail is really well done. There's a lot of waviness to the fur, and you can also see again that they've applied some very nice variation of color, even like a dry brushing technique, it looks like, over the fur to highlight the fur pretty nicely, and also to help blend in all of the patterning moving through, which you continue to see again those dark brown kind of stripes as you move through the course of the Smilodon. You can also see the muscle definition as you move down the front leg. This leg is standing pretty firm here as the Smilodon is walking through. You've got the toes sculpted pretty nicely. You can see the nails are painted with a black, which look pretty good as well. As you move up, you do have a little area of that lighter tone creeping up into the stomach area. Again, more of those dark patterns. Pretty smooth transition as we move up. And again, the detail looks really good. The fur detail on this is very vibrant and very realistic. There's a lot of waviness to it and kind of imperfections, which I really like because I think it helps to add a nice dose of realism. As we continue to move back, you can see the hip bone right there. You can kind of make out the muscle definition again, even though the fur would definitely be obscuring it a little bit. The fur becomes finer, of course, as we move further down. You still have that striping effect moving down. You can see the toes look pretty nice. Again, the nails and everything. And even the undersides, the paw pads and everything are actually painted for the Smilodon moving along. This one looks like Well, if my camera would focus, there we go. That one looks like it's a little bit misplaced, but for the most part, I think it looks okay. As you move out there into the tail, you have a nice striping effect leading out. Again, you've got some saggy fur there kind of hanging off the bottom of the tail. You can see the genitalia for the Smilodon as well. If we take a look at the opposing side, you can see how it's kind of turning its head away from us a little bit. I will say the paint looks a little bit different on this side compared to the first side. If we look over here, you can see the light tone looks a lot nicer as far, it kind of like tapers away and then shows back up there in the eye, whereas over here it just kind of all attaches, so there's no separation there. I mean, it still looks okay, but I think I'm more partial to the other side. So a little inconsistent as far as the paintwork goes, but still not too bad at all. And again, you can see how nicely painted that eye looks. But as you move back, you'll start to see again the same sort of thing going on here with the striping and everything moving through. Interestingly enough, well, I guess actually it does have the spots. You can see kind of spots here in the face, but they're a little bit more blended with the body. And then if you look over here, you can see the spots are a little bit more obvious. So another paint difference from one side to the other, but I'm not saying that's something that couldn't actually be possible on an animal like this. That's maybe the way it actually looked in real life. We never know. But as you move back, you can see the most obvious difference on this side would be the positioning of the legs. The legs are closer together over here compared to further apart on the opposing side, but the sculpt continues to look really nice. The paintwork continues to look pretty decent as well. You have these very obvious stripes that kind of stripe away on each side of the Smilodon moving along. More subtle striping down here in the stomach region. Yeah, pretty much the same thing over here, although it's a little more obvious with those lower stripes. You can see they're more like blended in over here, but still looks pretty decent. And again, if you look at the underside, you have that light tone as well as, again, the very nice sculpt work. The fur detail looks honestly excellent everywhere you look at it. So when it comes to a Smilodon, I would honestly say that's got to be one of the best ones that are on the market currently that I've seen, and definitely another really cool TNG release. As far as the size goes, for a length from the snout to the tail, about 5 inches or a little over 12.5 centimeters. And then for a height, you're looking at just a hair over 2¼ inches, or right around 6 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our TNG Smilodon. And as you can see, and as expected, it's kind of on the smaller side, but I would say it's probably fairly similar in size to the other Smilodon, the older Smilodon that TNG had released. And if that's the case, that makes sense. You would want these figures to at least be somewhat similarly sized. And for another comparison to show that, there is the older Smilodon from TNG, and you can see again that together they do look pretty cool. They definitely look like a neat combo, maybe a family of Smilodon. But I will say again, I wasn't sure at first which one I was more partial to. Now actually pulling the older one out, I will say I'm definitely still partial to this one. I just feel like it's so nice. It's got a very cool and unique looking color scheme. The paintwork is super impressive on this one, and it also has a very different pose than you often see for Smilodon. Like, I like the seated position of this one, but the newer one is still really cool as well. And if you do have the older one, the newer one definitely makes a fun companion piece. Like when you look at the two together, they definitely look really neat together. And when it comes to Smilodon figures, this one's definitely a bit on the smaller side. I don't feel like we need too many comparisons this time around because we've already reviewed the older Smilodon from TNG, so we've got a pretty good idea as far as the size goes already. But for one more comparison, we do have a Papo Smilodon that we brought in here to show you that obviously the TNG version is a little bit smaller. So this brand new TNG Smilodon is a pretty fun figure and definitely another really nicely done figure. It's just not quite, in my opinion, as nice as the older one. But that being said, you know, if they didn't already have the older one in their line and they just introduced this one alone, I would still be super impressed with it and still say again that, as per usual, TNG does such a great job on their prehistoric mammals. I feel like that's one area where TNG really excels, would be their prehistoric prehistoric mammals. I love their dinosaurs, but when it comes to their mammals, they often do just an absolutely bang-up job. And again, the same can be said for this Smilodon. Even if the older one is my favorite of the two, this one's nicely done. They've applied a really nice color scheme to this one that looks nice and natural. And again, you know, I would say pretty much the color that I would expect to see on a Smilodon. If it were walking by in front of me, like if it was in this color, I would not at all be surprised. I think they did a good job choosing the tones. Even though there is a little inconsistencies as far as the coloration goes from one side to the other, I still think it looks quite nice. There's some nice doses of realism and everything with like the gloss coats added, especially in the eyes. The eyes look super lifelike. And again, the sculpt is very nicely done, showing off kind of a growling pose, which is quite different from the open mouth seated version we had previously. And again, the detailing through the course of the figure is fantastic. It has very impressive, very vibrant detailing overall. So this is another very cool TNG figure, and again, showing you that TNG, although they were a little, you know, tricky, I would say, to get a hold of at first, they seem to be making kind of a comeback and coming back pretty strong, and definitely can't wait to see what else they will be releasing at some point in the near future. So if you are interested in grabbing this and adding it to your collection, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that on AliExpress. So make sure you check that link, pick up this Smilodon if you want it, and of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.